desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Nascha prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyutama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Satam prasangan mamavirya samvido bhavanti hritkarna rasayana katha tajjoshanada shvapavarga vartmani shraddharatir bhaktir nukrimishyati. In the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam 6:18-42. Nahi kaschit priya strinam yasa svashishatmanam patim putram bhrataram va nantyarte gatayanti cha. Nahi kaschit priya strinam anjasa svashisa shatmanam patim putram bhrataram va nantyarte gatayanti cha. Nahi kaschit priya strinam anjasa svashishatmanam patim putram bhrataram va gnantyarte ghatayanti cha. Anyone like to recite the verse?
Nahi kaschit priya strinam anjasa svasishatmanam patim putram bhrataram va Gyanat Yarte Gyatai Gyant Yarte Gyatayanticha.
Nahi kaschit priyastrinam anjasa swashishatmanam patim prucham bharataram Yanti artha katyanti cha.
Anyone else?
Nahi kachit priyastrinam anjasasvashisatmanam patim putram brataram va ganti arte katayanti cha.
Thank you so much. Na, not. He, certainly. Kaschit, anyone. Priyaha, dear. Strinam, to women. Anjasa, actually. Svaashisha, for their own interest. Atmanam, most dear. Patim, husband. Putram, son. Bhrataram, brother. Pa, or. Nanti, they kill. Arte, for their own interests. Ghatayanti, caused to be killed. Cha, also. Translation and pervert by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. To satisfy their own interests, women deal with men as if the men were most dear to them. But no one is actually dear to them. Women are supposed to be very saintly, but for their own interests, they can kill even their husbands, sons, or brothers, or cause them to be killed by others. Purport. A woman's nature has been particularly well studied by Kashyapa Muni. Women are self-interested by nature, and therefore they should be protected by all means so that their natural inclination to be too self-interested will not be manifested. Women need to be protected by men. A woman should be cared for by her father in her childhood, by her husband in her youth, and by her grown sons in her old age. This is the injunction of Manu, who says that a woman should not be given independence at any stage. Women must be cared for so that they will not be free to manifest their natural tendency for gross selfishness. There have been many cases, even in the present day, in which women have killed their husbands to take advantage of their insurance policies. This is not a criticism of women, but a practical study of their nature. Such natural instincts of a woman or a man are manifested only in the bodily conception of life. When either a man or a woman is advanced in spiritual consciousness, the bodily conception of life practically vanishes. We should see all women as spiritual units, Aham Brahmasmi, whose only duty is to satisfy Krishna. Then the influences of the different modes of material nature, which result from one's possessing a material body, will not act. The Krishna consciousness movement is so beneficial that it can very easily counteract the contamination of material nature, which results from one's possessing a material body. Bhagavad Gita therefore teaches, in the very beginning, that whether one is a man or a woman, one must know that he or she is not the body, but a spiritual soul. Everyone should be interested in the activities of the spirit soul, not the body. As long as one is activated by the bodily conception of life, there is always the danger of being misled, whether one is a man or a woman. The soul is sometimes described as Purusha because whether one is dressed as a man or a woman, one is inclined to enjoy this material world. One who has the spirit of enjoyment is described as Purusha. Whether one is a man or a woman, he is not interested in serving others. Everyone is interested in satisfying his or her own senses. Krishna consciousness, however, provides first-class training for a man or a woman. A man should be trained to be a first-class devotee of Lord Krishna, and a woman should be trained to be a very chaste follower of her husband. That will make the lives of both of them happy. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Panamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Translation again. To satisfy their own interests, women deal with men as if the men were most dear to them, but no one is actually dear to them. Women are supposed to be very saintly, but for their own interests, they can kill even their husbands, sons, or brothers, or cause them to be killed by others. Welcome everyone to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. The context here is Kashyapa Muni is approached by his wife with the request for a son who can kill Indra. That's because through the agency of Vishnu, Indra had caused the death of her sons Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. So she pleased him in her approach, and therefore he said she could ask something of him. So she asked for a son who could kill Indra. That was her request. And Kashyapa Muni is now speaking here with an analysis of woman, and Srila Prabhupada expands on Kashyapa Muni's discussion of woman's nature, and then he broadens it to man and woman's nature, and ultimately to rising above the bodily platform of life. Prabhupada discusses men and women in the second paragraph of the purport. He says that whether one is a man or a woman, he is not interested in serving others. Everyone is interested in satisfying his, her, or her own senses. So we are rotting in this material world because we are interested in satisfying our own senses rather than Krishna's. And we wanted to enjoy separately from him, so we came here to do that. But we're all just looking for satisfaction and love and enjoyment, anandamaya abhyasat. That is our natural tendency. Sometimes we're looking for it in the material, sometimes we're looking for it in the spiritual. The material is, of course, temporary and doesn't fulfill and satisfy, and it changes. The spiritual is eternal and gives real satisfaction. Lots of the class today is based on Krishna conscious philosophy that I had a discussion with Prabhu, the Prabhupada disciple, about just our basic Krishna conscious philosophy. So a lot of it will be based on that discussion with him. So in the material world, Srila Prabhupada called love in material world a transactional. It's like a business deal. But this real love that we're looking for, that real satisfaction that we're looking for, and trying to get in satisfying our own senses, the real love is actually devotional service in Srimad Bhagavatam 126. Savaya pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti ardokshaje ahaitu kepratihata yayatma suprasidati. That means that the supreme occupation dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Another devotee was in the discussion too, and we were talking about how, so you can see if the self is not satisfied, that your devotional service must be motivated and interrupted. Because such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. And we understand that love is a verb, it's an action. And I heard recently that Srila Prabhupada translated bhakti often as devotional service, whereas other places you will find it translated just as devotion. So service is implying there's an action there. It's love in action, that devotional mood, you express it through action. So part of that conversation was interesting. We're not interested in any kind of prenuptial arrangement with Krishna. So like we were saying, the supreme occupation dharma for all humanity is that loving devotional service and unmotivated and uninterrupted devotional service to completely satisfy the self. In this Bhagavatam, it propounds the highest truth for all, and it uproots the threefold miseries. And Bhagavatam 1, 28 to 29, part of that says Vasudeva Paro Dharmo. The religion dharma is rendering loving service unto him. So the implication is, like we were saying, if I'm not completely satisfied in my devotional service, it must be motivated and or interrupted. And material desire interrupts devotional service. But there's that desirelessness in devotional service means only desiring Krishna's pleasure rather than trying to satisfy our own senses. And Krishna is the cause of everything. He protects, and if he's the cause of everything, why be afraid of anything? But we're still working on that. We've got to get that determination. And what does it mean that Krishna is the cause of everything? If someone punches me in the face, is Krishna the cause of that? But he's the cause of the situation that you got yourself into that leads to that happening. So he's the designer of everything. He sets everything up for whatever kind of mentality we have. We can think that we are doing what we want, but gradually we come to an understanding that's not really what we want. There's so much variety in the world, but that's because we have free will and desires, and Krishna is fulfilling all of that. But at the same time, Krishna is trying to nudge us to what's really going to make us happy. The material world is so complicated, but you can boil it down to what the main purpose of it is. But that doesn't make it less complicated. It's complicated because people have so many desires. It's that someone deserves a punch in the face and someone's doing the punching. At some point, though, we need to understand that all our interactions with the material energy is not going to give us what we're really looking for, unless we come to the understanding that we need to transcend the material desires. If it was also simple, Krishna could just walk up to us and say, "Surrender unto me, and you'll be happy." But we're so entangled in desires, so he gives us a situation where we can learn our real self-interest is to surrender unto him. Therefore, there's variety and complexity. And there's this question that often comes up. If God's kind, where is there so much suffering in the world? And it's a very profound topic. Srila Prabhupada would say it's not Krishna's fault, it's our fault. We turned away from Krishna. Krishna Bahirmukha, and then we're suffering. And the suffering is there for a purpose, though. It's not just to punish us. Krishna's not vindictive. He's not punishing us just because it makes him happy to see us suffering. He's trying to help us be happy. And, what's the process to get there, Like, we're not there yet, of course. And we've got to chant Hare Krishna and engage in devotional service. And as we get that higher taste, we'll give up those things that don't give you pure devotional service, because it doesn't give you the higher taste, param drishta nivartate. We just try to understand what Krishna wants us to understand. Not that we're going to understand Krishna's motivation for doing everything in a particular way. We just have to trust that everything he's doing is for our benefit, And, how can we have that trust, though? We're always making choices and desiring, sometimes bad choices, sometimes good choices, sometimes bad desires, sometimes good desires, but be intelligent. When we desire good things, we get a good result. When we put a little faith, we see how that gets rewarded. Then we should increase that faith. I'll go on a limb and chant Hare Krishna for a few days and see how it goes. If we actually get benefit, we should step it up, not be complacent. And the more we surrender, the more we trust, eventually we'll be on a higher platform. Srila Prabhupada would say, just give this one life to Krishna. We wasted so many lifetimes pursuing sense gratification, trying to gratify our own senses. And then in this life, we get frustrated and come to Krishna. We make a scientific experiment. Just try it and see what happens. Just hypothesis, you make a hypothesis, experimentation, observation, and then conclusion, scientific process. Krishna consciousness is just like scientific process. So there's a hypothesis, if you chant Hare Krishna, you'll be happy. If you take the process of Krishna consciousness, you become free from material miseries and find true happiness. Now just chant Hare Krishna and your life will be sublime. It takes a little faith. Faith comes on the heels of everything else I've done is just suffering. Especially these days, people aren't so inclined to enter spiritual life. We've been put through the ringer. There's 4 ways people come to devotional service: desiring wealth, inquisitive, desiring knowledge, or wanting freedom from suffering. And then once nothing else works, like, I guess I should come, Krishna sends us association of pure devotee who tells us how we can make progress. There's a little reciprocation from Krishna. There's a little sincerity there. Let me reciprocate. So we're experimenting. Let me try this, and we get a little faith. If you're sincere, you'll get a little taste. And then we think, then I should take the process more wholeheartedly. But what does that sincerity mean? So someone asked, how does one become sincere? It's by performing acts of sincerity. Someone who is sincere, you know what they're going to do. Even if I don't feel like doing those things, if I just do them, it reinforces the conviction that this is what I'm supposed to do. Sincerity is you firmly have trust in a particular process and you apply yourself to it. The dictionary says sincerity is the quality of being free from pretense, deceit, or hypocrisy, which is interesting because this is Kali Yuga. This is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. Sincerity means you're honest, you're not trying to cheat or deceitful, not duplicitous. Coming back to this point that we are stuck in the bodily conception of life. There's this verse that discusses, it's quoted from the Narada Pancharatra and is found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1112, the CC Madhya 19170. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate. Bhakti or devotional service means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are 2 side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. So we have all these upadhis, these designations, that I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm of this nationality, I'm of this faith. But when one is freed from all material designations and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. And Hrishikena Hrishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uchite, engaging senses in the service of the Lord, the master of all the senses. So we are trying to engage our senses to gratify ourself, but it doesn't work. Just like if the hand goes rogue and tries to just smash some halava in the palm to nourish itself, it won't feel nourished. But if it gives it to the mouth and it goes down to the stomach, then all the limbs, including the hand, will be nourished. So satisfying Krishna's senses, the master of all senses, helps us get our own senses satisfied, since we're all just searching for that satisfaction and freedom from material miseries. We need that higher taste of engaging our senses in the service of the Lord to give up the lower tastes, to give up the trying to engage our senses in material sense gratification. So using all our senses in the service of the Lord, Krishna has so many ways he's given us to engage our senses in the Lord, in his service, through smelling the flowers offered to him, or prasadam cooked for him, or the incense. They're seeing his form in the temple, or seeing the devotees who remind you of Krishna, or seeing the holy dhams, using your legs to go to the temple or walk around doing service, or walk and take pilgrimage to the holy dhams, or to go to your job and then offering that money to Krishna, the results to Krishna, taking care of your family, using our ears to hear about him and remember him through hearing pastimes about him, through attending Bhagavatam class like we're conducting Bhagavatam class right now, listening to his pastimes, listening to kirtan, and the tongue can vibrate to the chanting of Hare Krishna, where Krishna is dancing on the tongue. And you can take prasadam, food offered to Krishna, and let's purify all the senses in that way. Maharaj Ambarish prays like that, to use all his senses in the service of the Lord and use all his limbs in the service of the Lord. And we try to do this, but we're also just so caught up in the duality of the material world, where there's so many conditions of life, like seeing things as good and bad, or good and evil. And Krishna reminds us that in Bhagavad Gita 6:8 that, Samalostrashma Kanchana, one sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. And in Bhagavad Gita 2:57, one who's fixed in perfect knowledge, he is without attachment, who does not rejoice when he obtains good or lament when he obtains evil, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. So just being equipoised in the duality of life, because there's always going to be these ups and downs in the material world, material ups and downs, while we're on the path trying to get back to Krishna. We're being equiposed in that. We here to tolerate, in the verse 214 Bhagavad Gita, Martas Barshas tu Konteya, tolerate these non-permanent appearances of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course. So it's always the happiness is gonna end, and then the distress will come, and the distress will end, and the happiness will come. In Bhagavatam 1.5.8, Narada Muni discusses this. 1.5.18, where he's saying that just like distress comes automatically, happiness comes automatically without endeavor. So these things are already happening, where we can think when we're in a distressed state, okay, that means happiness is around the corner. And when we're in a happy state, that means distress is around the corner. But ultimately, we want samsiddhir haritoshanam, please the senses of Hari. Work to always please Hari samsiddha, the highest perfection, Hari, the personality of Godhead, toshanam, pleasing, samsiddhir haritoshanam. and through all conditions of life, whether purified or impurified, is remembering Krishna, who's beautified with lotus petal eyes, the Garuda Purana Manasasnan, which means mental bath. Garuda Purana Manasasnan says, Alma Pavitra Pavitro Va, Sarva Vastam Gatopi Va, Yasmarat Pundarikaksham Sabaya Bhantara Shuchihi. Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu. So in all conditions and stages of life, whether one is purified or is impurified, and has passed through all conditions and stages of life, if one simply remembers the Lord who is beautified with lotus petal eyes, he becomes purified both outwardly and inwardly. So just using our senses to remember Krishna, to engage in his service, to hear about him, we become purified outwardly and inwardly, no matter what condition of life we're in, no matter what duality we're experiencing. Prahlad Maharaj talks about this material happiness and distress in Bhagavatam 7.742, where he's saying like that Sukhaya dukkha mokshaya sankalpa yakarminaha sadapnoti haya dukkha manihaya sukhavrataha. In this material world where we all are, every materialist desires to achieve happiness and diminish his distress, and therefore he acts accordingly. Actually, however, one is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, its conditions of distress begin. So we hear about this. You can see in our own lives, as soon as we start planning, the anxiety comes. So you're afraid you're going to lose the thing you're getting. You get the thing, and then you're afraid you're going to lose it, or you're suffering because you're without it. And even when you start planning, just more and more desires come as you're trying to get one of your desires fulfilled. It's like Buridan Food was talking about, it's like making a shopping list. And you might have like 5 things you need on the shopping list, but then once you write those down, seems like it is infinitely just keeps expanding and there's more needs being created. Or like the story of the tiger and the story of the mouse, where it approached a person and said that, please, the cat is always chasing me. I want to become a cat, so then I'm not always being chased by a mouse. Now, because when I'm in a mouse body, I'm always being chased by the cat. So then he's given a cat body, and then he's being chased by a dog, so then he's like, okay, well, please give me a body of a dog so that I will not be in this predicament. And then he gets the body of a dog, but then he's still in a state of distress, and he says, give me a body of a tiger. And when he gets the body of the tiger, then he says to the person, now he's going to eat the person. So he's like, now you become a mouse again. So you keep trying to change your situation and shift your situation to be happy, but there's always some problem. Yeah, so Krishna, sometimes he will fulfill our material desires in a way where we won't have that desire again. Or there's different ways he will interact with us. But Krishna says that it's one who's very dear to him. They're equal in all these dualities that we were discussing. So he says sama, this is sama. Sama means equal. So we heard sama earlier when we were talking about the pebbles and gold, seeing stones or gold as the same. Sama lo strasma kanchanaha. Sama lo strashma kanchanaha. And here we're hearing sama, shatro chamitre cha, tata mana pamanayoho, shitoshna, sukha dukkeshu, happiness and distress, sukha, happiness, dukkha, distress, and then sama again, sama sangha vivarjita, tulya ninda stutir moni, santushto yena kena chit, aniketa stira matir, bhaktiman me priyo naraha. Priyo means dear. Bhaktiman me priyo narha. Such a person is very dear to me. One who's equal to friends and enemies. It's very hard to do that, right? Who is equiposed in honor and dishonor, also difficult. Heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy. And then he continues on and ultimately says that person is very dear to him. So we're taught to tolerate these different dualities, these different changes, and try to be equal. One who sees all living entities as spiritual sparks in quality one with the Supreme is a true knower of things. What then shall be illusion or anxiety from him? The Sri Upanishad tells us in verse 7, mantra 7. And Bhagavad Gita 5:18 tells us that Vidyavanaya sampane brahmane gavihastini shuni chaiva shapake cha pandita samadarshanaha. Seeing equally a brahmana, a cow, an elephant, so many things, seeing them equally. Just the same spiritual spark is in all these living entities. And being equipoised in honor and dishonor. Sometimes we're going to get honor, sometimes we're going to get dishonor, but that's just based on this material body. Ultimately, we're a spiritual soul that is Satchit Ananda, full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And the heat and cold that this body suffers, heat will come, and then heat will go, cold will come, cold will go, happiness and distress will come and go. There'll always be these dualities while we're here. But if we can just tolerate and finish this one life for Krishna. Because we've transmigrated through so many lives to get this human birth that's so rare. We can just live out this one and try to get back to him in this life. Tolerating fame and infamy that is just about the bodily concept. Always remembering that we're just a servant of Krishna. Trying to use this human life to rise above the bodily platform and come back to realizing ourselves as a soul, as a servant of Krishna. We're always trying to serve our own senses rather than Krishna's, and we're always going to be a servant. So just trying to change that service attitude towards serving Krishna for our real self-interest, the real self-interest. I'll open here for any corrections or comments, questions, realizations on how to just any realizations or anything like that. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Good morning, Jana. Sorry I couldn't be there this morning. But the realization that I have is that you've taken a very, very, very controversial verse and made it relevant and understandable. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, I'll go to Srila Prabhupada.
Hi, Krishna. I have a question. I'm not sure. Oh, okay. You speak on this point about controlling like the senses and how Krishna, like we can engage our senses in Krishna's service by like smelling the lotus flowers that are offered to Krishna, or sorry, those flowers that are offered to Krishna's feet, or the incense, or like these things that are listed in Nectar of Devotion. But I was just wondering, it seems like nowadays our senses are so overstimulated from like social media and from all the things that we're experiencing, that like these like things like, oh, smell like the incense and the flower, and that will satisfy your sense for smell, and use your hands to like offer flowers to Srila Prabhupada, and that'll satisfy your senses of like touch. Might not be like enough to satisfy the like wild senses of the average Kali Yuga engager. So I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. The senses are like wild horses, always just looking for engagements, and we're not always going to be right by the lotus, by the flower to smell it, and there's this tendency to always, just look for the next entertainment, engagement. It's like I think we can look into when we get that impulse to like get some engagement. I think often it's just like the mind really needs a lot of engagement. Um, and then it can control the senses. So, reading pastimes of Krishna and then, just spending like a whole section, reading a whole story, a whole section of a pastime. Then letting that be something you reflect on throughout the day that comes back to you. So giving that the mind an engagement so that it needing this engagement, it'll have something that's already in its repository in its newsfeed that you've already input into it, where it can sort of chew on that and mull over it. Or chanting, another thing is chanting the Maha Mantra as you go about your activities. That's another way to engage the mind. As mantra is really, man means mind, tra means to free. That's one way to describe mantra. So keeping the mind always engaged in some sort of like transcendental vibration or thought pattern or topic can help that even whenever, you're not like right, like maybe you're not right there where you can smell a flower or, use your hands to offer to Srila Prabhupada. Is keeping that transcendental vibration in the mind helps these senses get engaged when we're in this, like, we're kind of bombarded by all these sights and sounds of the material energy. You're driving and there's all these billboards, or you have to go to the store and it's just like, there's so many packages of options of all these things now to buy for no reason, just to, satisfy, like make up desires for you to satisfy your senses. But really, like, all we need is like Krishna to satisfy our senses. So rather than these artificial desires that are created from seeing all these stimuli, so we can kind of control how much stimuli comes in and try to put devotional stimuli in, control our associations. Should I talk more, or did that answer your question?
That's good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think you hit all the right notes. Thank you so much for a wonderful ecstatic class. Yeah, my maybe just some addition to that response you gave. Of course, living in the temple is a different environment, for most devotees. So those of us living in the temple, it seems like the best arrangement. This is just my opinion. Like Krishna says, in my opinion, it seems like being engaged in devotional service, practical devotional service, seems to be something that works very nicely. Of course, devotees, sometimes say too much of Krishna, too much of devotional service makes the heart very, very hot. But I beg to differ on that one. That's like you were saying, if there's engagement, and if I've done my 6 hours of devotional service, practical devotional service, done the worship, I've done my chanting for 2 hours, that's 8 hours, and I've done my reading of 2 hours, that's 10 hours. And whenever there's time left over, it seems like that's where social media features very, very highly. Not only social media, all types of stimulation of the senses. So it seems like, just to my impractical brain, that if one closes all the gaps, then there's very little time left over for social media. And the idea is how to minimize that time. I think we just need to become creative. I'm preaching to myself. How to be engaged 24/7 in Krishna's service, that we can have some relief from social media, from prajalpa, discussing, other devotees and how they should do things better. So many, other things the mind takes up. So, yeah, just some addition to that question.
Thank you for that nice addition. Yeah, and it's inevitable that our mind's gonna keep drifting off, but like always bring it back under the control of the self once it wanders and try to give it that 24-hour engagement like Prabhu was saying.
Can I add something? Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much for your class, Jonah. I really appreciated it. And the point that I was thinking about a lot is just that point about how happiness and distress are just part of the package of the material world. Like the way you were saying it, like, yeah, you have happiness and then that means you're gonna have distress. Like it just like it's inevitable that you're going to, if you're gonna have one and then you're gonna have the other one. I don't know. I think for me today, just that reminder that I don't need to be like, it's not a surprise when distress comes because that's part of being in the material world. Only when we're in the spiritual world with Krishna do we only have happiness and like bliss. So that would just help for me to remember, because sometimes I can just be like, yeah, why am I having distress? Why is this coming up? But just that reminder just from the scriptures that like it's hard, but that's part of what it means to be in the material and have a material body. So I think for me that was just helpful to be reminded of that's there. But we're so blessed that we have Krishna consciousness. We have Krishna, we have the devotees, so we have the proper shelters to take in happiness or distress. So I think for me that was the take home that I needed to hear. So thank you for bringing that up today. I feel that will help carry me through my day. So thank you so much. So many nice points, but that was the specific one that's staying in my head. Thank you.
That's a great point. That as devotees, we know what shelters are available. Sometimes in the material world, or just people don't even know that there are spiritual shelters available. And they're just trying to fulfill these basic needs of eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and they don't know that there are these other shelters they can take, and we're blessed to have this human body to be able to progress in this life.
Hare Krishna, Jana. Thank you so much for the class. I just thought I could add a little something if that's okay.
Hare Krishna, yes.
Yes, I was just thinking this nice point about just keeping a little literature on hand wherever we go and share that with whoever we meet, because Prabhupada's own words and realizations are in his books, and it's so powerful what one little book could do to change a person. And I know that's how I came to Krishna consciousness. And it's incredible, because even so much distress and so much things are there in the world. But yeah, just one little thing coming from a small, it doesn't even have to be a whole Gita. I mean, any of Prabhupada's books, but if we just, I feel like, make a point to carry it with us wherever we go, even if you go to grocery store, wherever, at least one person try to, give out something to somebody. And of course, there's different methods of doing that. And, even prasadam is very powerful, which I know the temple does. Like when they go to the food bank, they give out prasadam. They're always making a point to try to give out prasadam, and prasadam is very powerful as well. But for those that work outside or go and do things outside, yeah, I just feel like it would be such a powerful part of practice as well as to share it. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yeah. I thought you were actually going to say keeping literature on hand to make sure we read when we're in times of like a lull in a space of waiting in between activities, or like, standing somewhere just waiting for something. It's good to keep literature on hand also to engage our own selves. We can have like apps on the phone that are like, pocket Vedas or things like that that also don't need internet as well, or ones that need internet, so that you can always make sure you can utilize old time. And then especially if you have like a small book, I guess, and if you're just reading it and you're in line at the grocery store, and maybe someone will say, "Oh, what are you reading?" And you can give it to them.
That's what I thought too. Like I thought you meant just have it like so that when you need to engage your mind, you can pull it out. Something else I just thought of was I think I don't know if I heard in Bhakti Raj class or his lecture. I remember him talking about keeping like he would keep like on a piece of paper. I don't know if it was like a verse he liked or something like scripturally or something spiritual that he liked. He would just like keep it, and I always liked that. Like if you have like, I always thought that was nice. Like if you have like a favorite, I don't know, verse, or like you could memorize it, or you could just like, you don't have to put it in your physical pocket. I guess you could put it in your phone pocket, like have it on your phone. But that could be distracting though, because you could get distracted when you're trying to find your go-to thing. But I always thought that was nice. Just like if you already have like if you already know ahead of time, like you already prepare, like, okay, I know my mind is going to be agitated. So let me already know where I want to take shelter in. Like, oh, when I'm agitated, there's like this certain pastime, like that really helps me. Oh, there's this verse, or maybe there's a devotee that I go to and they can help me. Or like for me, it's helpful if you already kind of have some shelters in mind of like specific where you want to go spiritually, spiritual shelters. So then when your mind goes there, it's just like, oh yeah, when my mind does this, this is where I take shelter of spiritually to help myself. So I just thought of that too in terms of Madhupam Leela's question. Because then we can just go to automatically, because sometimes when you're agitated also it's hard for you to take shelter the way you want to, because if you're in an agitated space, it can be hard to take shelter. But if you already have go-to places that you're going to take shelter in, like, oh, I grab my beads, or oh, I listen to this specific kirtan that whenever I hear it, it's just like it helps me so much, or the specific class. I think that can help, because then you already have that. So then when you get agitated, then you can just go to your go-to spiritual shelter. I don't know. I'm just thinking about that in terms of Madhupam Leela's question. I have certain things I listen to just when I need them. Like if I'm having, like if my mind's giving me trouble, I have certain like lectures or kirtans that I listen to intentionally to help me. So just wanted to add that for Madhapan Leela's question. Hopefully that's helpful.
That's a nice point about having go-tos, and especially about having maybe a verse, or even if you didn't memorize a verse, some just closing your eyes and remembering something about Krishna or Krishna consciousness. Because, like you said, whenever you go grab something, you can kind of get distracted. But if you just go internal too and see what you can pull out, can also be a good practice. Okay, so I think we're at time. You dear devotees. And Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.